Thank you everyone for being here on time. It's a great pleasure. Maybe it's enough time. Maybe while people joining in, they will be joining, but maybe we should start. So again, thank you so much for being here today. We are here today hosting this webinar with our great and beloved guest, Saddam. I will be here facilitating or hosting this webinar. My name is Haytham Abdullah. I'm the co-champion um, for the MENA Youth Community of Practice, as well as my colleague and friend Hanan. She will be taking over like at some point uh, from us today, and of course our colleague Maimuna, the champion of the youth lead like community. She's also here with us today to support us in this webinar. Again, thank you for being here today. I know it's Ramadan, and maybe some of us is fasting, and for those who are in Jordan, we have a lockdown in a couple of hours for the weekend. Your time and attendance today here is very much appreciated. If we just go to the agenda of today, like basically we're gonna give you a better introduction of what's the goals of today and etc. in a minute, and we'll be introducing our guest Saddam, and then we're gonna give him the floor to introduce I learn like experience in engaging youth in response to the COVID pandemic. Um, after that, after Saddam will share his experience with us, we're gonna open the space for some questions, if you have any. And please, as Saddam is presenting, you can also like put your questions in the chat box, maybe not to miss it. And then after that, we're gonna give the space for people to say their question, raise their hands, and etc. Then we're going to be doing a small exercise for 5 minutes, and we will be sharing it with you at the time. And then we're going to be sharing some polls with you to answer. Yeah, basically the objectives of today is or to give maybe a bit like background. Our community of practice is part of a bigger like network of youth power to learn network, and we are working there to connect and better promote for positive youth development. If we can go to that slide, Hanan. So the positive youth development is mainly recognizing youth inherit like rights and result in youth having who have assets and ability to leverage these assets. It's more of a holistic approach, looking at youth not as challenges as such, but more as assets and agencies who need a better enabling environment to show and contribute back to support the environment and support the community around them. Either it's like on local or national like levels. It's look, as we said, as you like at the agency of youth and their assets rather than their challenges. Um, Also, like to connect it with us today, we are mainly looking into how youth can be using their assets and using their skills and using their networks within their communities, and this is a great example we are looking at is like an experience such as I Learn, who's an organization that is mainly based on youth and contribution of communities. So the objectives of today, if we can go to the next slide, Hanan. The objectives of today are to introduce I Learn, to how I Learn engage with youth. Like youth engagement in COVID response, it was like a very unique experience. Like most and many countries around the world never experienced such thing. And what are the best practices and what are the key like lessons learned from such an experience in country like Jordan, that maybe we lived in some emergency situations, with taking in consideration the context of like refugee crisis like happening in Jordan before, like the recent like Syrian refugee crisis, the Jordanian community and the Jordanian like civil society and the international development maybe and humanitarian organization joining efforts to respond to that, but responding to more a nationwide emergency such as COVID, and how youth were part of it. I will not speak more. I will just introduce our dear guest and guest speaker today, Saddam. Saddam is the co-founder of iLearn Jordan, and he's a member of the Global Leadership Council of Generation Unlimited of UNICEF. He's also a recipient of the Badr Award for Young Jordanian Social Entrepreneurs and Global Literature Fellow, and a member of World Economic Forum and Global Shore Shapers community. He's also an alumni of the Swedish Institute and a fellow of UNESCO Youth. And being part of the development sector in Jordan, I would always say that Saddam is one of the shining stars in who's engaged so much in the community and the development sector, especially with rural like areas and very vulnerable communities all around. He's like so far away from the trendy big cities, but more into like going away and finding those communities who have so much assets, and work with them. So Saddam, the floor is yours, and yeah, we would like to hear as much as possible about iLearn and iLearn experience.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to see many familiar faces. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Haitham, and the team for supporting and doing this. I'll start a bit, to tell you, why I'm sharing this and why, when I spoke with Haitham. So as since the crisis started in March, uh, there has been a lot of challenges across the country, in Jordan, MENA, and globally. But of course, countries like Jordan has been affected severely, and most of the solutions that we saw, across this crisis up till today, there has been amazing and shining stars in community led solutions, and maybe this sheds light into the scale of solutions that are being shown and proven that they're working in this crisis. We see many challenges in in uh, in working with the communities in regards of the restrictions and of the governments and the lockdowns and the seriousness of taking into consideration, if we go in the field, what kind of impact this has on the communities that we work in, whether we put them at risk, and how are we making sure that measures are being taken seriously. And young people always, they want to do something, and keeping them away from actually being part of the solution is not good at all. And I think they have a lot to offer to improve the situation economically and socially in the country. And today I'll share iLearn experience, starting, with why iLearn exists and how did it exist, and what did we do today with when COVID happened. Just 1 minute. So, a bit about iLearn. So my name is Saddam Sayyaleh. I'm the co-founder of an initiative, now an organization called iLearn. The whole idea of iLearn, it started in 2012. And the reason it started is it came from a personal experience. And I think a lot of people know, in rural communities, especially the kids that I like to say they fall between the cracks. We see them, but at the same time, there's so little being done. There are organizations who take care of such issues, but they're not efficient enough to solve the solution, to solve the problem. So I grew up as an orphan since I was 5 years old. I remember, my first day in school. That's how I knew that I'm an orphan. And then uh, being, a part of different orphan committees in my community, I realized many things. Like many, the status that I have in the community. So I grew up in Souf camp, which is in Jarash. It's in the north of the country. It's a Palestinian refugee camp. And when I was young, I was mostly, the socioeconomics was very challenging. So a lot of dependency on these orphan committees who support families of children who are, have challenges with socioeconomics and so on. But when I got older, I also got to recognize, how limited my options are in life, and especially with what the environment always keeps saying, your degree matters. If you don't have a degree, then your future is quite dark. It's very difficult to succeed. And I started working in a very young age. I started, with constructions, and then I ended up in working in a Jarash tourism site, which is one of the most famous tourist sites in the country, selling coffee and tea. And that's how I got to learn English. And and at that time, it was actually, just to tell you a bit of context, that was actually the first time I I did my first business. I like to call it, because the way I moved from constructions into selling coffee and tea was, one kid moved from Gaza camp to our camp, and he was giving me a business proposition, basically. Join us at George Tourist site, and that's how I got into that field. So at that time, I started working for almost 4 years in George Tourist sites, and then when I was 18, at that time, I met many tourists. Some of them were archaeologists. I befriended many of them. But when I was 18, I was as many Arab young people. I just want to escape. I want to go away. I want to leave the camp. I want to leave this environment. So I was saving some money, and then I went to an internet cafe. I was looking the cheapest country in the world. Where can I go? I didn't know. So I ended up looking into India. You know how beautiful India is on photos, and it was very cheap, and you can get visa very easily. And I went to India, and I was very lucky to actually find an opportunity to volunteer in a children's shelter. So I stayed there for 2 years. At that time, I was 18. India was massive for me, but that experience itself, you would think, someone coming from a very rough environment going to India, it's not very different. It was not different, but it taught me a lot. I stayed there for 2 years. I was broke again, so I returned to Jordan, and I started working as a barista in Jebel Luebde. And that's how I got to know the development sector, the international workers. What does it mean, to be part of this environment? And when I'm back, I remember I was sitting with a friend, again complaining with a lot of negativity about my childhood, my environment, and so on. And she said very basic thing: it's either you do something or not. And I did. I went back to the same orphan committee that I grew up in, and I started doing what I'm good at, which is teaching English academically for the children who I was once part of this environment. And at that time, I recall, I was with the kids, and the CBO, the orphan committee, basically, where he benched one of the kids because he's super hyperactive. And then I remembered myself. I was thinking, I'm all my childhood, I was forced being in a room because someone decided that I want 50 kids for this activity, and I don't have a choice because because basically, if I don't show up, the CBO or the orphan committee might punish me by reducing the stipend that we get by every month, or in a way, if there's food packages, we wouldn't get it because they would not put us as a priority because we're not committed. So at that moment, it was very a funny moment, because that's I realized that I was just one of these people, that they showed up, they decided what kids and youth need. These kids and youth who are in this room, they're not here because they like what they're learning. They're there because they have to. And that's how I learned all became to alive, because then I it was more of a philosophical moment, that I realized that nobody asked our young people, our children, what do they need? What do they want? What are their interests? Do they like being here? Do they like this environment? All these questions are never asked. And um, and at that moment, I realized I need to do something, but I couldn't do anything with, like, I think I was earning something like 300 JD at that time, so I couldn't do something massive. And I think this was the moment that I realized I needed to create a model based on a very minimum budget, and but works with the local resources that exist in the community. So at the beginning, we had a lot of try and error models, and at the end, I think somewhere in 2014, 15, we were able to formalize the lessons learned uh, over the many years on how to operate with a very minimum budget, an entire program designed to engage young people, and with a focus on children who are at risk. And so I wanted to show you this. So this was the first photo that we were able to take at iLearn in 2015. This was in Suf Camp. Um, and I remember this photo because at that time, it was 2 weeks before the children graduation. So we operate in cycles a year. So that means every cycle, 3 cycles a year. That means each cycle is 4 months, to make sure that children are able uh, uh, to showcase the results of their learning. So how can we move from theory to tangible learning or tangible results? And I love this because I love this photo because some of these kids, they're, for example, they're amazing sellers. They have one leg in school and one leg in the market. But if you use this, intelligence and smartness, for them to know what kind of things they can do with it, then you can see amazing results. And that's why we have this sort of graduation, is basically to tell them, of course, we don't have anything, you don't have anything, but look what we came up with. And it was a beautiful photo at that time. But above all, I learned, since 2012, we were able to grow to 7 other communities, and other 7 other communities in long-term interventions, but also many other communities on a neighborhood level, community level, village level, refugee camp level, but in short-term interventions. So we were able to adapt our model based on the need and based on the intervention that we want to apply. And here, just I don't know, how can we zoom in? Can you all see it clearly, or
Yes, it
okay?
looks good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or
so
even maybe if you would like, we can zoom a bit, if that's possible.
all right. So I mean, the whole idea of this model, it was based on a lot of lessons learned and a lot of failures, and trying to figure out how can I learn sustain itself inside a community with very minimum resources. So we looked into, I'm sure you're familiar with a community map, and we looked into what each and every community has in resources. What are the stable elements in a community that we can work with? So, for example, when we choose an area, if if Ireland decided to work in the south in Amman governance, for example, we created, based on many experiences, how can we select an area? How, if we want to operate in a governance, we cannot work with the whole entire governance, but we can work in certain areas. How can we select it? And we started creating criteria for the area, based on the objectives and the mission of Ireland. And when we choose an area, we look into three elements: public space, youth, and schools, and basically teachers, I would say. I would start with one, each line by one. So we usually look into at iLearn public space. We we in every country I visited, every country I've been there, I always see many CSOs or many government buildings that are physically massive but dysfunctional. They don't operate within the space, within the area they are intended to work in, but this physical space is empty. It's maybe they use it once a week, they use it twice a week, and we decided at Ireland that we don't want to be another space in the environment. We want to look into public spaces, and we consider CSOs and government buildings are public spaces, and we start evaluating, if we are going to operate with a CSO, the physical space, their mission, their reputation, their track record, and so on. And once we find a CSO, the reason we usually in each area with a CSO, because we want to create community bond. And usually these CSOs have an entire, they have trust already existing in this area. So we partner with the CSO, creating an MOU that says, Ireland wants to create something called Ireland Space for Knowledge. And once we create the space for knowledge inside the CSO, we help the CSO physical space and their management to network them with private, public sector partners, but also helping them with the infrastructure to make the space better. And then of course, once we have this space existing, Ireland Space for Knowledge, then it needs a program. The first thing we look into is university students and youth in the area. And when we start attracting young people to be volunteers at this space, because they're at the core of delivering Ireland programs, we ask them that if you volunteer with us, we will help to build or upskill you with trainings and connecting you to internships and programs that help you with your employment. So rather than a young person going to Amman, for example, to do, or the city center to do an internship, we help them to get these internships within their own community, trying to build their skills and knowledge within the community in exchange of their volunteerism. And then we make sure, I think this is one of the most important learnings that we did, is because they volunteer with us and they gain first knowledge and we gain their trust, what we ask them to do is, we need your friends. And what I mean by their friends is that, I had friends in school before dropping out of school, and these friends, they can reach out to me. We're still friends. So we asked them, you're in university, so I'm sure you have friends dropped out of school before. So how can you bring them in? Young people who are in the informal market, the unemployed young people. So we asked our youth volunteers to attract them. And this what we call as a success measurement. We call it, how can we make the uninterested interested? So how can we make these young people engage with iLearn and make them interested again? So because they also, they live in the shadows, and nobody ever goes to them because of the stereotypes and the stigma that actually follows them around. And that was one of the most important things, is actually how to break this stigma around them. And then of course the last part is the teachers. We all know, when I was in school, my teachers knew that I'm gonna drop out of school. they they know that I did not go. I'm not attending, and they know what what I'm going through. And so many children are like this. I know the ones in my classroom, but I'm sure in each classroom there are cases like this in female schools and male schools. So what we do is we usually go to the teachers, because teachers don't want to report cases. They don't have a, actually, most of the teachers, we did a baseline study on this, and we realized that teachers are not familiar, or they don't have a mechanism actually of reporting at-risk young people. There's no mechanism at all. So what they end up doing is just either doing personal intervention, which puts them in trouble, or they just ignore it. And most of them, they just ignore these cases. So what we asked young people, what we asked teachers to do is help us. Sorry, what we asked teachers to do is to come and volunteer at iLearn Space, and also promote iLearn Space inside school. So in each classroom, you would see the teacher usually promoting iLearn Space. Hey kids, do you know that there is a space in this CSO called iLearn Space? Go to it. You will love it. Go register. So, and also, when we train the teacher at iLearn Space, for example, we teach them on the mediums of learning, how can they use mediums inside the classroom. Automatically what happens is once they are trained on that, they reflect it in the classroom, and that's why we have the red arrow. That means we have double impact. That it we thought previously we didn't see it, but we start seeing it when we start visiting schools that teachers are using the same mediums they're using at iLearn Space outside school, and that was very interesting. Um, and the overall, generally, this means we have public space, iLearn Space, and then we have youth volunteers, and we have teachers and children from school who are at risk. And when you combine all of this, then you have an entire amazing human resources. So we mobilize a lot of human resources. So what we need now is to organize it. So under the umbrella of the CSO and iLearn Space for Knowledge, we organize these resources to deliver certain programs. And these programs are, the community engagement, the child development, and youth engagement and youth empowerment. I'll tell you more about these programs, but the reason I'm showing you this model, and this is the most important part, is for iLearn to actually scale, uh, we need the CSO to actually commit to taking into iLearn model. So what happens is our end goal, everyone has the, superhero models or superhero missions. For us, is we want them to kick us out. Is basically to tell us leave us, and the way they do that, the way they tell us leave us, is by iLearn shifting after a year and a half, shifting its model from direct implementation into shadowing the CSO to lead the program, and usually it's done by the youth volunteers, and this happened in many experiences. So, for example, we deliver programming, life skills, arts and theater, and languages. If the CSO chooses to proceed with only the programming part, then we consider this as a more sustainable intervention, because this space didn't exist before. This program did not exist before, based on a community. So when we leave this community, we start shadowing the CSO, and we shadow them forever. They become part of our network, and then they continue their operations. And this is basically the model that iLearn operates in each community. And of course, it's personalized with its objectives in each community. Again, I was telling you about the iLearn programs. So with a youth support program, and this is, I think, why we all are here, how we were able to engage young people in COVID-19. And I think a lot of it has to do with the model, because the model is a lot community based. We have, just so you know, in each area, one employee, and they're embedded inside the CSO for coordination and reporting and doing assessments. and the rest of the operations is done by the local community. So, and it's based a lot on youth from the community itself. For many, many of the young people that we have from the community, when they started with us, they were very similar to my story. They're very resentful to their community. They don't feel there is hope that something can be done. But once we gave them the chance to actually see the impact, many of the youth, they started leading their own initiatives as well under the space, and creating more programs based on their skills, and we started supporting that. But for example, when COVID happened, many of our youth volunteers, they approached us on how can they support within their community. And the successful part is we were, all our coordination was done through, WhatsApp, phone calls, and so on. But we were able to design an entire intervention, for example, to make sure that children are still accessing online learning. Resources is being distributed. There's so many. We don't work in charity way, but we did that. We did many trainings on their capacity to operate as teams, because there were so many young people as well. They were very individual. They did not know how to attract other young people around them to work on a certain initiative or a certain idea. So we did a little bit on the field team building, and that's how we had youth groups inside Ireland, and this never happened before. Usually the youth groups operated under, the educational program or the training program. But once we saw individual leadership by young people from the same community, we started building youth groups around them. And these youth groups were able to provide many services inside the community when lockdowns happened, but also especially now. For example, uh, we know that mothers, for example, took the position of teachers up till now with COVID crisis. But what happened in our case, in the communities where we work, most of the parents are illiterate, so they cannot really teach children or youth directly, their children. And that means an increased risk of children dropping out of school or a gap in their knowledge. So what happened is our young people took the position of teachers, and they started following up with the children. Um, and sorry, and with our child development program, it's a lot of uh, I would say psychosocial support, but more of a tangible type of psychosocial support. So most of these children, we have, adolescents and children between 9 to 14. We consider, the target group in children, but we also above 14 they become adolescents. And what we do is we pair them with another youth volunteers to exchange knowledge and experience. And with the community engagement, as again, I go back to this model because I think one of the biggest risks usually, if you are providing a program inside your space, your biggest fear is that when the youth leave your space, everything is destroyed because the environment is still the same. You're teaching them things that might equip them with knowledge and skills, but that will only encourage them to leave, not to stay. So to actually help young people to stay in their community, we need to engage the entire community, the schools, mosques, see other CSOs, their parents, because if the child is learning something, very modern, very crazy, or they want to do something crazy, they need support from the community. With COVID, the reason our youth were able to leave their homes to help others was because their parents accepted. If their parents were rejecting the idea, I don't think we would have done anything in COVID. So, because of the community engagement that we did in each step we take, when COVID happened, we saw an increase of acceptance of, yeah, let's do these initiatives, and it was very successful. Um, and you can see here we did a campaign with our youth to distribute electronic devices. We distributed over 8,000 devices in 7 communities in Jordan. to help parents be connected and children connected to their education. And that was only, it was massive operation with youth, and they all were super excited on how can they do that. But it was not only about distribution. What we did is also we did parents groups on WhatsApp, led by youth from the same community. So if we are operating in Sufcam, we paired each group of parents with 4 to 5 young people to work as tutors and technical advisors, and then they did home visits. Many of them did home visits. It was a very encouraging solution, and it was actually a suggestion by our youth, and this was part of our engagement. But uh, the what I'm trying to say here is a bit of a reflection on more than a year of of delivering, different services to the communities where we operate. And one of these reflections is that the modality, how we start, is very crucial. And we started with youth, and youth, they're actually solution driven, especially our generation today, because they understand the challenges. They understand their environment better than I am. Maybe I know Sufcam because I'm from there, but I might not know Deir Allah very well in comparing to our young people. But because we created a community-based solution, our young people felt confident that they can do so much throughout the model, because they have the trust of the community, and they have the trust of iLearn, and they have the trust of all our stakeholders. And when they see that, they know that whatever ideas they come with, they can be nurtured, but also, supported as they lead it, not us. Um, and here is a message about, maybe COVID showed this, that local solutions, they're the ones who actually were up against COVID. I wouldn't call, of course, in a major level, there there are many players who did great work. But when lockdowns happened, when all of that happened, it showed us how important to focus and support local solutions, support local youth organizations, because they showed an excellent resilience across the crisis and up till now. And I think if we look at it today, we will see many nice examples, but they're also scalable if we actually invest in them. And basically, um, this is what I'm trying to say here, is that, I'm a big supporter of youth organizations, youth solutions, and if we actually believe in them, you can see huge potential in investing in them. And thank you uh, for the opportunity you gave me to speak about iLearn and our experience throughout COVID. And I hope the model really showed you why it succeeded. And that was the point of this conversation today. And if we invest in such models and help it to scale in other communities, I think in any situation, whether we're in good times or bad times, it will still deliver its results. Thank you very much. And back to you, Haitham.
Thank you so much, Saddam, and thanks everyone for being here and listening to all of this. It's definitely very inspiring. Or what you said. Maybe I will give time or space for whoever wanna like ask a question directly to raise their hand, or maybe also if no one wanna do it now, I can also start with the questions in the chat. Yeah. Okay, Faris, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Saddam, for a nice presentation. Beautiful work too, as well. Thank you very much for all your work. My question is, when you're in this community, the train the trainer model, have you documented that yet or not? Are you in the process of documenting it so therefore it could be duplicated? And what are your thoughts on that? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Faris. Faris, I mean, an interesting thing that we're operating now is a packaging island. I think we're ready to scale even beyond Jordan. And what we're doing today is we're packaging the know-how on how to establish that's such a model, and also packaging our curriculums that we use that volunteers implement for children, and how to use this community mobilization and organizing, and how long will it take you to have a sustainable program. We're hoping by beginning of next year that will be done with packaging island model.
Yunan, please go ahead.
And one thing,
Yeah.
Faris, it will be an open source package, so you can always. I would definitely help if you contact me. I'll share with you the link on our website for you to access it.
Yunan,
Yeah.
please.
Hi. Yeah. My name is Yolande. I'm the champion of the higher education community of practice. And what an inspiring and wonderful presentation, grounded in reality. So I like that. It's not just blah, 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 but you really made it real. So thank you for that. My question has to do with higher education and the universities. How do you get the student, like you go to university, where do you go to in the university to get these volunteer students? Is there a career person? Do you go to the faculty of education? I mean, how do you get that? And how do university professors react? Do they say yes, no? Do the internships get, I'm just trying to figure out that whole university, because it's not their, what they're used to doing. So you're
Yeah.
breaking new grounds, but
Uh,
I'd love to hear how you're doing it.
So we don't do it through universities. We should, but we're not.
Okay.
But most of these young people, they're university students, but they're from the community itself. So they go to university, but they are volunteers with iLearn. But what
I
we
see.
do, we used an existing system. So most of these students have to do an internship before their graduation. And what we do is we link them with internships uh, through our network with the private sector to make sure they're getting quality internships, not just ink on paper. And also, for example, the University of Jordan, a long time ago, introduced that the students have to do volunteering hours to be able to graduate. And what we do is students of the University of Jordan, we make sure to give them the paperwork that they volunteered with us, so they're able to get the credit to be able to graduate. So we use the infrastructure of the system, but we don't really operate formally with it. And the reason for that is that we have an overload of volunteers, so we don't want to open doors that we're unable to systemize or give them the quality, especially the young people, the quality that they need with learning and upskilling. Uh, but we do have relationships, but informally, not formally.
Got you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And maybe to help you, we work with the Ministry of Education as well on a schools level.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Maybe some of the questions are coming in the chat are mainly focusing on the voluntary position and internships. So maybe Saddam, if you can tell us a bit more about that. Like for example, Asen like asked, does the voluntary position count as the internship, or the internships are another opportunity? Also, what kind of training journey people go through? As well as there's questions from Noor asking about what's the motivation to help implementing and exciting and massive operations. Um,
Can I
Also,
answer
yeah,
one by one?
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Please go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I think Esni, I can tell you, uh, the internships. So we have two tracks. One, an internship with iLearn. So in each community, we have three interns from the volunteers we take as an organization. But also we link young people with internships with the private sector. So we have 70 companies with the private sector who are linked to our network. That young people, our volunteers, receive internships by them based on their interest and their university degree, or the way where they want to go as young people. But what we're negotiating now with iLearn is to help these young youth volunteers. Do we want to call them volunteers or interns? Because what happens is our youth spend 4 months, almost 8 to 10 hours a week, implementing programs with us, volunteering. So do we want to call them interns or volunteers to help them with their employment in the future? So this is a discussion that we're having today internally, but I'm more into, internships, because the title itself, because they learn a lot in it, and this has to do with the training journey that they go through. They go through a 4 months intensive training, things that has to do with implementing iLearn program directly, but also the training journey that the youth have. It has to do a lot with their upskilling them to bridge a gap between what they have, what services they have, and where do they want to go. So most of these communities, they don't have opportunities like incubators, accelerators, entrepreneurship trainings, and so on, and many others, digital literacy, numeracy, and so on. So what we do is iLearn operates as a pipeline between all these stakeholders and linking them to the communities where we work, where our youth access these trainings for free. I hope I answered you. And the last, Rania, are your program built in a certain model, and are they accredited? Rania, I don't understand your question, if they're accredited or a certain model.
It's like usually, when you do trainings or internships, usually it's like, is it academic? There's academic accreditation. At least this is how I understand it.
So
Actually, my question was that yes, knowing the country that we live in, where their accreditation is important for any kind of work, even volunteer or internship work that the people have done, are they accredited by a certain either local organization or international organization?
So iLearn is an organization. So I don't know if I'm answering right, but if you're talking about the accreditation of volunteering hours and so on, so we the youth use our organization to accredit their volunteering hours, and we use also Nahnu platform, which is more or less like an impact measurement of volunteering hours, to also receive a second accreditation of their volunteering hours with iLearn.
I'm asking about this because we started off the same, and then we got accreditation from the International Theatre Institute of UNESCO for the training that we do in drama, to just give them that accreditation once they finished their workshops.
So Rania, now I understand your question. No, we still operate into the informal education. We're trying to actually get our curriculums accredited by the Ministry of Education under the informal education. So hopefully this goes on and it succeed. But as I know, the Ministry of Education does. I'm expecting years of process until we get it accredited and formally acknowledged under the informal education part.
Maybe we can help you with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rania.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe the second part of Kristen, like, question about how do you follow up after the internship to work, like how do you help with that?
So part of iLearn is the mentality of do it yourself, really. So when they are volunteering with us, when I think we have a problem of babysitting, I would say. And I think iLearn is trying to strengthen the whole idea of in the individual strength that you can do it yourself. So going through our volunteering program, our internship program, accessing different networks, I don't think, by the end, we are very clear with our young people that we equipped you with the tools. It's now your turn how you use these tools. So we cannot babysit every person, but we can mentor them. We can mentor them on how to use these tools. So once we finish this program, our coordinator in the community, myself, everyone, are there to help them, to mentor them how to use these tools. But we cannot always stay with them. They have to know how to take these internships, how to find these jobs, and they have to experience it themselves. So that's why, the whole idea of island volunteering is to also give them the critical thinking, research tools, digital skills, opening their minds to the whole SMEs market, not just the big corporates. And once we open their eyes to all these tools, and they're equipped with these tools, I think they would be ready for the market, and just with a little bit of mentorship.
Amazing, thank you. Maybe to tell us a bit more about the kind of learning journey people get through, like in short, maybe because we're running also out of time. Also, if Saddam, if you can share your email with our like dear guests,
Sure.
that can
Uh,
also be good.
1 minute. So now I'm reading essay. I'm interested to find out more on the training and learning journey, though. Yeah, so I'm definitely, I'll tell you. So most of our, as I said before, our volunteers start in a in a, we tried very much. Each community has different beginnings, I would say. But definitely, digital literacy, numeracy, access to market, explaining to them exposure and things like this. There's so many elements on how we operate our youth program. But I can tell you something, like I'm a big believer in, um, is that the mind, we work around the mindset, is exposure to what the world can offer. I mean, just an example, I'm happy Batul is with us, because one thing, I mean, I encourage is always, because I'm a dropout, right? So something that I encourage a lot is that don't follow a paper trail, right? So follow experience, because today, if you're gonna get hired, you're gonna be hired because of your skills, because of the ideas that you're offering. You're gonna get you're gonna start your own business because of what you learned on the ground, how to manage finances, how to manage all of that. So the learning journey is I would say iLearn offers a really chaotic pool of opportunities to young people. And what we do is we just keep shoving this pool in their face to tell them pick and choose, because whatever you're gonna learn, whatever you're gonna learn, you're gonna you're gonna see the result of it once you decide what you want to do with it. It's not it's very designed in a way to lead them into independency, and decision making, having the ability to decide and to reflect this decision, understand their feelings, understand that they are not victims. I understand that systems can be unfair. There are so many elements like political and economic situation that can be put pressure on them, but they need to get out of it in their own minds. Um, I hope that's okay. And you have my email, please, and I can share more documentation with it.
Hi everyone, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, actually, Saddam, for the impressive work that ILEARN is doing and the ILEARN model to adapt to the pandemic, specifically for youth engagement. Actually, due to the limitation of the time, I would like to ask you to fill the poll to help us to know what is the best schedule for upcoming meeting.
Yeah. Can you see the result, Hanan?
Yeah, that's a tie, I guess.
Yeah, that was almost a tie between 3rd of June and 10th of June. We will definitely like reach out with like the next date. Yeah. Okay. So Hanan, if you want to close.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Actually, it has been a pleasure being with all of you and Saddam as well. We learned a lot from the ILEARN best practices and lesson learned. And thank you, everyone, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, and please remember to register on our community of practice. Also, to reach out to me and Hanan if you have any ideas of, if you have any like suggestions for us, and to share this community of practice among your network. It will definitely be a pleasure to have more and more members coming in and joining our events. Thank you so much.